Hi, I'm Matthew. I'm your course facilitator for Sociological Perspectives. This is a course about sociological theory. So what is sociological theory really? The word theory comes from the Greek theoria, which means to contemplate or to reflect on the world around us. In a sense, theory begins with a deep desire to understand, but there's a catch. It can pull us so far into abstract thinking that we lose sight of what's right in front of us. Here's a great example, the story of Thales of Miletus, one of the earliest Greek philosophers. Thales was so caught up in watching the stars, trying to unlock the mystery of the heavens, that he literally fell into a well. It's kind of a perfect metaphor for theory. Stars are beautiful and full of mystery, but if we're not careful, we can stumble over what's right here on Earth. That's the tension at the heart of all theory. On the one hand, it pushes us to reach for big ideas, deep truths. On the other, it reminds us to stay grounded in the world as it is, the tangible, the observable, the everyday experiences we often take for granted. So when we talk about sociological theory, we're talking about a specific kind of reflection. It's the effort to make sense of society itself as something real, as something with structure and logic. At its core, it asks the basic question, what is society? Of course, that question opens a floodgate, because doing sociological theory isn't just about one answer. It can mean describing social life, explaining why people act the way they do, or even trying to predict future patterns. And no, there's not one single grand theory of sociology that ties it all up neatly. Instead, sociological theory is full of perspectives, which we're going to cover in this class. What they all have in common, though, is the goal of surfacing what we usually overlook. That's one theory that's most powerful functions. It challenges the obvious. It takes our assumptions, our common sense beliefs, and says, wait a minute. How do we know that that's true? It breaks down the taking for granted and asks, what's really going on here? And often it does this with the aim of social change, of naming and hopefully addressing inequality or injustice. Now, theory does love big concepts, and with that comes a risk, oversimplifying. Abstract ideas can lose context if we're not careful. That's why sociologists often rely on empirical research. That's observable data, what we can observe and test in the real world to balance out these big ideas. This back and forth between general theory and specific observation is central to the way we sociologists work. This balance has roots in the Enlightenment, where thinkers in the 18th century Europe applied reason and science to study society. They believed in the power of individual freedom and rational thought. Many turned their attention away from religion and towards civil society, hoping to uncover the true laws that govern social life. But here's where modern sociological theory steps in with a critique. Contemporary sociologists have become much more critical of the assumptions baked into that Enlightenment mindset. Why? Because it was deeply rooted in Western and often Eurocentric view of the world. Thinkers like Claude Lévi-Strauss, coming out of cultural anthropology, challenged that perspective. He emphasized that no one culture, especially not Western culture, is a standard by which all others should be judged. In fact, he argued that we need to stop assuming we can understand other cultures through the lens of Western ideas like modernity or secularization. That's not just arrogant, it's inaccurate. So today, sociological theory is all about reflexivity. It doesn't just study society, it turns the lens back on society itself. It asks, whose voices are we centering when we're doing social research? Whose experiences are we ignoring? If our goal is to understand the full complexity of global social life, We have to make space for the perspectives that have been historically excluded. That's what makes sociological theory so vital and so dynamic. It's not just about building models or naming structures. It's about questioning power, challenging our own assumptions, and making room for new ways of seeing it.